So this week, Gabby, we are talking about your favourite and least favourite stadiums you've played at, you've been to, you've watched games at. So we're going to start with an obvious stadium, and that is Villa Park. Just take me back to when you made your debut, going out there in front of all the fans. How special was it, and how special is it in, when it comes to English stadiums? Because people do say it's like one of the meccas of English stadiums.
Yeah, I think when I was in the youth team, Villa Park was used for FA Cup semi-finals, and because it was one of the biggest stadiums, it's Birmingham, good place to be as well for teams to travel from different cities. Stadiums outstanding, 42,000 fans available, pitch is perfect, pitch is nice and big. It's like a homely stadium, Aston Villa. And me as a player coming through, being on duty, we'd call it in the academy at games where you had to make sure the balls were pumped up. You had to grab the balls when the team had finished with them and do the drinks or whatever. And looking at the pitch and thinking, wow, imagine playing on that. And then to finally do it, many times was like a dream come true.
And when you go back now as a fan, how do you feel, sitting in the stands near the Holt end, iconic stand at the stadium? How does that feel?
You just feel like, the atmosphere and the buzz and that feeling you have when the adrenaline hits you of like, okay, your team's on an attack and you're watching as a fan. It's no other feeling. And when your team scores, you're jumping up and you're celebrating.
And when it comes to, other iconic English stadiums, what would make your top three of where you played at? Like, what ones stand out?
Oh, it's got to be Anfield. It's got to be Old Trafford. Them two are big ones for me, and I think probably White Hart Lane.
Really?
Yeah, because White Hart Lane was that stadium that, it's so many top players have played there, and to go and play in that stadium, and you know what it is as well. It's stadiums that aren't around now. Highbury, I played at. Highbury's one. I can say I played at Highbury. I played against Arsenal at Highbury.
Walls,
yeah, like stadiums that aren't around now. In 30 years' time, I can tell my grandchildren I played at Highbury.
And what is it with Anfield and Old Trafford? Just the icons?
Just the iconic, two massive clubs, biggest clubs in England, you'd probably say. And just the history behind them stadiums, many league titles been won in them stadiums. And just the fan base as well, especially Anfield. Electric, the fans are on you, it's an electric atmosphere, and to go there and play and to go and win there and score the only goal of the game, things like that you remember forever.
And funny you say Old Trafford with the leaky roof. You keep having a go at the leaky roof.
Yeah,
Still
you know what? My family always got wet when they come to watch the games. The away end's leaky roof was terrible. So my mum and dad had to have an umbrella each when they come to Old Trafford to watch the games.
And it's interesting you mentioned White Hart Lane there, because it goes on perfectly to my next question of, do you prefer the old classic stadiums that teams have come through? Like look at Luton's now at Kenilworth Road. Or do you like these really slick, up-and-coming, futuristic stadiums? Like how Tottenham have now got
I think if I'm a player, I'd probably prefer the new ones. So, for instance, when Man City's was done and Arsenal's, the Emirates, and even when the new Wembley was built and I played there for the 21s, England and seniors, just how big they are and how big the stadiums are and how new they are. As a player, you want to play in them ones. But obviously, maybe fans prefer their old stadiums like West Ham. Most fans probably prefer Upton Park than they do the new stadium because I don't think it's got the atmosphere. They're a bit too far away from the pitch, especially West Ham's stadium. But as a player, you want to play in them big new stadiums.
And obviously, for Villa and England, you played at Wembley, something that I can't say that I've done.
Yeah.
I've been there as a fan, but what's that like, walking out on that hallowed turf? It's such a moment.
You know what's crazy about Wembley is that, it's probably the same size as Villa Park, but feels twice as big. I don't know to hold the day of it, the big day, but whenever you watch teams at Wembley, it's like, it takes longer for players to get to the end of the pitch. The ball never goes out of play, it stays in. It feels like the pitch is just gigantic. But just the history, to be honest. I know it's a new stadium, or what is it, 20 years old, whatever it is, but the history of playing at Wembley, and you go back to the old Wembley as well, the history of playing players that played there.
And on the flip side now, some of the worst stadiums you played at, maybe an FA Cup tie, awful changing room or something like that.
You know what, it's not a bad stadium, but Bradford's, it's not a bad stadium, but inside was It's a big stadium, isn't it, Bradford? They can hold, I'm sure, over 20,000, I'm sure. But I remember we played there in the cup, and we actually lost. We got battered in that game, and I think we were sharing showers. I think we was with the home team.
Really?
And it's just, you're not used to the, because you've been brought up at Aston Villa and everything's fancy, and you're not used to the real nitty-gritty football stadiums.
And what about when it comes to, like, maybe the smaller pitches you played on? Any, like...
Oh, yeah, I didn't like playing at... I struggled at Crystal Palace.
Oh, yeah.
Selhurst Park, very small stadium. Bournemouth Stadium. I don't know, okay, at Craven Cottage, but them sort of stadiums were very small. QPR. Them stadiums I didn't like because they were so small, the pitches. My game was built on running in behind, so I could never get the space. Like there was nowhere. If you wanted to run in behind, the ball's going to hit the fans because the pitch was so small.
And when it now comes to stadiums where you didn't play, is there any that stand out where you're like, I'd love to have gone in front of fans at that particular stadium?
I think I played in every stadium. Obviously not the new one, like West Ham and Spurs. They'll be ones I'd love to play in. But more is abroad.
Yes.
I'd love to play at the Nou Camp.
Yeah.
The Bernabeu, the San Siro, like big stadiums like that. Galatasaray, Fenerbahce. The big stadiums and them atmospheres. That would have been a dream. Didn't happen, but I'd say Premier League. I played in most of the big stadiums.